today we're finding the relative frequency, the cumulative frequency, and the midpoint of a frequency table that are already posted here. Now let's just take a quick look at the definitions for a relative frequency. The relative frequency is the percentage or the proportion for each class. The cumulative frequency is the sum of all frequencies, and the midpoint, which we need for finding the mean and the standard deviation, is calculated by adding the lower limit plus the upper limit divided by 2. So now let's get started with the relative frequency. To find the relative frequency, we first of all have to find our total frequency combined. And the total frequency here is 12 plus 8 is 20, 26, 29 plus 1, 30. So our total frequency is 30. Now let me just write the formula down for the relative frequency. We're using f, the frequency of each class, divided by the total frequency. And we're multiplying this by 100 to get our percentages. So let's start with 12. 12 divided by 30 times 100 is 40%. Then we're going to the next class, which is 8 divided by 30 times 100. And here we get 26.7%. When you find your relative frequencies, you want to make sure that you round your percentages to 1 decimal place. 6 divided by 30 times 100 is 20%. 3 divided by 30 times 100 gives us 10%. And 1 divided by 30 times 100, 3.3%. The sum of all relative frequencies should add up to 100%, or at least close to it, since we're rounding. Now let's find the cumulative frequency. For the cumulative frequency, we get started with the first frequency of the first class. So the first frequency of the first class here is 12, and that's why we write out 12 here. Now we're adding the next frequency to 12 plus 8, which leaves us with 20. And so forth. So now we're using 6, and we're adding 6 to 20, we get 26. Then we use the next frequency, which is 3. 29 plus 1 is 30. So I added all my frequencies to end up with 30. Now the cumulative frequency of 30 and the total frequency of 30, they have to be the same. If you get a different number here, you may need to recalculate. Now let's find the midpoint. The midpoint, the lower limit, 1, plus the upper limit, 5. 1 plus 5, and we divide this by 2. 1 plus 5 is 6, divided by 2 is 3. So the first midpoint for the first class between 1 and 5 is 3. Now to find the other midpoints, we can just make this easy on us and find the width, which we have learned in the previous video. The width here, again, would be the difference of either the lower limits or the upper limits, and the width in this case is 5. So now all we have to do is add 5 to our first midpoint, and we get 8, so 8 would be the midpoint for the second class, plus 5, 13, plus 5 is 18, and plus 5 is 23. So these are our midpoints for each class, and again we're using the midpoint for finding the mean and the standard deviation and the variance of a frequency table. Now you can also find the midpoint if you don't want to use the width by adding 6 plus 10 is 16, divide that by 2 and you get 8 as well. So this is one example of how to find the relative frequency, the cumulative frequency, and the midpoint of a frequency table.